Hello everybody, I'm Beelzebub. Welcome back to my channel. Sorry I'm running a few minutes late tonight, but I had to find the idiot book. Um, you know, this stupid thing. Turns out it was just on the bottom shelf over there. Oh well. So, the past few weeks, with the exception of last week, because my friends had a Christmas party, we learned about what happened to the dinosaurs and continental drift. Now we're going to talk about carbon-14 dating. Now, initially my thought was this book is so easy I should be able to do it all by myself because, well, literally an idiot wrote it. Then I started to think maybe I should get someone who knows what the fuck they're talking about to debunk this themselves, but nah, that's work. I didn't feel like finding someone in the relevant subject each given week, and well, honestly, this book is so stupid I can debunk it by myself. But hey, no one tell Ken Ham he's missing link Dr. Zaius looking moron. I'm feeling mean right now. Admittedly, I had to preemptively take some ibuprofen because the last two chapters have given me a headache. But enough about me. Let's get into this ridiculous book. What about carbon-14 dating? Carbon, that black substance in charred wood, comes in several forms. One less common form has atoms which are 14 times as heavy as heavy hydrogen atoms. It is called can't talk tonight, called carbon-14 or C14 for short. Unlike common carbon, C12, carbon-14 disintegrates or falls into pieces relatively easily. This instability makes it radioactive. Many people are concerned that C14 proves biblical timescale of history to be inaccurate. Everyone should be concerned that carbon-14 proves the Bible to be inaccurate because it does. The Earth has been around longer than 6,000 years. The existence of lead by itself proves that. However, the C14 clock is in full accord with the biblical picture of Earth's past. Sure it is. Carbon-14, or radiocarbon as it is often called, is manufactured in the upper atmosphere by the action of cosmic rays. Ordinary nitrogen and 14 is converted into C14 as shown in figure 1. Where is figure 1? Of course, it's on the next page. There's a little image right here. Wait. Yep, right here. Just in case you're curious about how he is representing it. Ordinary carbon, C12, is found in the carbon dioxide in the air we breathe, which, of course, is cycled by plants and animals throughout nature, so that your body, or the leaf of a tree, or even a piece of wooden furniture contains carbon. When C14 has been formed, it behaves just like ordinary carbon C12, combining with oxygen to give carbon dioxide, turn the page, C14O2, and also gets freely cycled through the cells of all plants and animals. The difference is this: once C14 has been formed, it begins to decay radioactively back into N14 at the rate of change which can be measured. That's probably true. I'm not an expert in how carbon-14 works. If we take a sample of air and measure how many C12 atoms there are for every C14 atom, this is called the C14 by C12 ratio. I hate Snapchat. so very much. Sorry about that. Because C14 is so well mixed up with the C12, we expect to find that this ratio is the same if we sample a leaf from a tree or a part of your body. Think of it as a teaspoon of cocoa mixed into a cake dough. What? What does that mean? Think of it as a teaspoon of cocoa mixed into a cake dough? Okay. Interesting way to look at it. After a while, the ratio of cocoa to flour particles would be roughly the same no matter which part of the cake you sampled. The fact that the C14 atoms are changing back to N14 doesn't matter to a living thing. Because it is constantly exchanging carbon with its surroundings, the mixture will be the same in the atmosphere as in all living things. Okay. Again, I'm not sure if this is accurate. It's been a long time since I've been in a school of any kind, and even then, I was never an expert on how carbon-14 worked. So, for all I know, it is entirely possible that he accurately described it for once. Of course, I do think that would be a first. How the carbon clock works. As soon as a plant or animal dies, however, the C14 atoms, which decay, are no longer replaced by new ones from outside. So the amount of C14 in that once living thing gets smaller and smaller as time goes on. Another way of saying it is that the C14-C12 ratio gets smaller. In other words, we have a clock which starts ticking at the moment something dies. Figure 2A and 2B. So I'm going to show you. Here's 2A. Give you a moment to look at that. And then down here is 2B. There. Now, I don't know if it starts the moment something dies, because I don't know. I mean, brain death doesn't necessarily happen at the same time your heart stops beating. So, I don't know. I don't think that's entirely accurate, but then again, this is an old book. Not that Ken Ham likely has read any new information, especially since all new information is going to, make his beliefs look stupid, because they are stupid. Obviously, this works only for things which once contained carbon. It can't be used to date rocks and minerals, for example. We know how quickly C14 decays, and so it becomes possible to measure how long since a plant or animal died. Now, okay, I want to bring up something important, because Idiot Ham likes to bring up how you can't use carbon-14 to accurately measure some things. And that is entirely true. You can't use carbon-14 to measure all things. But he likes to talk about the inaccuracy of carbon-14 dating for some things and how that proves creationism. This dude likes to talk out of both sides of his mouth, and it is just astonishing to me that his followers lap it up. The key assumption behind the method. Again, science doesn't work in assumptions. Ken Ham does. Honestly, what I should do is get a whiteboard behind me, and every time he uses the word assume, or I say conjecture, or every time he says probably, honestly, I should charge $1 every time he does that, because I'd be rich by the end of this book. But wait, how do we know what the C14-C12 ratio was to start with? We obviously need to know this to be able to work out at what point the clock began to tick. We've seen that it would have been the same as in the atmosphere was at the time the specimen died, so how do we know what that was? Do scientists assume? No. I don't know what scientists do, but I'm not a scientist. My understanding, or his understanding, is not relevant because, well, he's an idiot. Do scientists assume that it was the same in the past as it is now? Well, not exactly. It is well known that the Industrial Revolution, with its burning huge masses of coal, etc., has upset the natural carbon balance by releasing huge quantities of C12 into the air, for example. That actually sounds correct. True studies can tell us what the C14-C12 ratio was like before the Industrial Revolution, and all radiocarbon dating is made with this in mind. How do we know what the ratio was before then, though, say thousands of years ago? It is assumed that the ratio has been constant for a very long time before the Industrial Revolution. Is this assumption correct? For on it hangs the whole validity of the system? Why did W.F. Libby, the brilliant discoverer of this method, assume this? Again, science doesn't work on assumption and conjecture. That's you, Ken. That's you. You own that. You won't admit that you do, but just based on the number of times you assume things and say possibly or probably, that's you. We know that C14 is continually entering the atmosphere and hence the carbon cycle, and that C14 is continually leaving the system by its decay back into N14. The more you have of a radioactive substance, the more there is to decay. That is, as more enters a system, the rate of leaving the system increases. To understand this, let us use an example of a rainwater tank. Okay. Representing the system with evenly spaced holes in the sides, figure 3. Here's figure 3. I'll give you a second to look at that. Maybe I'll show it to you after I explain his nonsense. By the way, still blind reading. I haven't read ahead. I am with you the whole way. Yeah, that's why I needed ibuprofen before I started this, because I'm going to have a headache by the end. But hopefully, the preemptive measure I took with ibuprofen will prevent that. Let's see. Let's switch on a tap at the top representing the formation of C14 entering the system at a constant rate, A. At first, the rate of entry will be far greater than the rate of exit, allowing water, C14, to build up. The more it accumulates, however, the more the rate of exit until... Did an idiot write this? Of course it did. It's Ken Ham. The more the rate of exit until the amount pouring in is the same as the amount pouring out, B. That is, from the moment of switching it on, the C14 level will build up rapidly at first, then gradually taper off until it reaches the steady state, number 3 in the diagram. Libby, along with almost all the scientists of his day, assumed that this steady state had been reached long ago, and that C14 would now be entering and leaving the system at the same rate. Again, I don't think they assumed anything. There would have been study and data and measurements going into this. And who would have known that between Christmas and New Year's, it'd be so damn warm? Why? Because calculations show that it would take only 30,000 years from switch on the first time cosmic rays began to bombard the atmosphere. For this to happen, and of course, geologists and others by then had long since persuaded most people that the Earth was much, much older than that. In other words, C14 would have been in a steady state for many millions of years already if the Earth were that old. The Earth is that old. Actually, the Earth is considerably older. It's about 4.5 billion years old compared to a 14 some billion year old universe. So, yes, the Earth is that old, Ken. I am not a scientist with relevant study into this. However, there are actual scientists that do this, not, what is he, a former high school teacher? Honestly, if I was the school he worked at, I would lie and say he didn't work there. Because, holy damn. What do measurements show? Was Libby right? In his day, measurements of which he was aware showed that C14 was entering the system some 12% or more faster than it was leaving. This would indicate that the system was less than 30,000 years old. What makes you say that, Kenny? That doesn't sound accurate to me. Since equilibrium had not yet been reached, but the discrepancy was within Libby's estimates of experimental error, and so could be ignored, some have suggested that the preconceived idea that it had to be in equilibrium ensured that the given error margins were big enough to encompass the actual result, but this may be unfair. Why would it be unfair? Because it makes you look like an idiot with an egg on their face? How long is this chapter? Wow, this is a much shorter chapter than usual. Okay. So he's just going to crybaby for a few pages, and that'll be it. What about modern, more sophisticated measurements? Unfortunately for the old Earth advocates, these continue to support the real difference between the rate of production and the rate of disintegration. For instance, the following figures quoted from nuclear chemists Fairhall and Young suggest that it is as much as 50% out of balance. And I quote, "We note in passing that the total natural C14 inventory of 2.16 times 10 to the 30th atoms corresponds to a C14 decay rate of 1.63 times 10 to the 4th disintegrations m squared s of the Earth, considerably below the estimated production rate of the C14 atoms averaged over the last 10 solar cycles, 111 years, of 2.5x or times 10 to the 4th, quantity plus or minus 0.5 times 10 to the 4th, close parentheses, atoms m squared s. The source of this discrepancy is unknown unless the present day production rate is indeed significantly higher than the average production rate. Now, a thought occurs. Why is it that Ken Ham is using Carbon-14, something that measures former living things, to measure the life of the Earth? That doesn't make sense to me. Apologies if you're upset by loud slurping noises. I am too. I irritated myself a little there. Wouldn't dating rocks be more accurate? And considering the solar system would be roughly the same age, we can and have dated meteorites to get an idea of how old the Earth is approximately. So why is he using Carbon-14? It makes no sense. However, there are many complexities and inaccuracies in these measurements, so says you. Some have used a new non-uniform model based on average imbalance of some 35% to establish a recalibration scale, which would mean that the older dates have to be more greatly reduced than later ones. It seems in order at first glance, as does the use of the imbalanced data to establish an upper limit to the age of the Earth's atmosphere of some 7,000 to 10,000 years. However, one must proceed with great caution before stating this dogmatically, as the model may be too simplistic. For instance, how do we know that the mixing of cake dough was really complete? If you remember that idiotic comparison earlier, a couple sections ago. Is the carbon in the top of the ocean in balance with that in the bottom? What are the possible errors and estimates of influx-outflow rates of C14, and so on? Historic dates and tree ring data suggest that the overall issues are more complex than maybe at first thought. Yes, science is very complex, Ken. This is not news. This is something we have known, that science is complex. And you try to boil it down to, oh, I have a book. That's Ray Comfort. That's Ray Comfort, not Ken Ham. What does Ken Ham sound like? Why did I slip into an Aussie accent? I am so sorry, Australia. I don't know what I'm doing. Someone's from New Zealand, too. Is Ray Comfort from New Zealand? I feel like I'm getting a little off topic. I very well could be. Anything's better than this book, honestly. Well, not the Bible. Idiots believe that to be literally true. Other factors. You need to consider 3 other possible effects. If, as most creationists propose, there was a vast water vapor canopy around the Earth, this would have shielded the atmosphere from some of the cosmic radiation. Therefore, the amount of C14 in the pre-flood world would have been significantly smaller than at present. So a specimen from before the flood would appear to be very old or of infinite age. See, but there's no good reason to believe that there was a water dome. And calling it a dome implies that the Earth is flat too. So are you a flirper now? Or canopy, I'm sorry. I interjected the word dome. That was me. But there's no evidence for a canopy either. Never has been. And where would all that excess water go? I mean, just the most basic of thought debunks creationism. If you think about anything for longer than 3 seconds, it occurs to you, oh, creationism is stupid. I'm a moron for having believed in this. Because it had so little C14 in it, making it look as if it had been decaying for tens of thousands of years. Most coal is vegetation that grew pre-flood and was buried by the flood. There was no flood. I've lost track of how many times I've said that. Honestly, I should go back, rewatch this, and just count the number of times that I've said there was no flood. I know I've explained why on at least 3 occasions throughout this series the origin of flood myths exist because people live near water sources. We need water if we're going to survive. So we park our civilizations as close to a water source as we can, which is why a lot of cultures sprang up around rivers, lakes. Not so much the ocean, although some of that, you can't drink ocean water, but maybe they just wanted a pretty view. I don't know. Plenty of lakes out there. Plenty of rivers. Now, So it would therefore not be surprising to find that local coal and oil, for example, would have virtually no radiocarbon activity to be measured. 2. The measured exponential decay of the Earth's magnetic field, as described by Dr. Thomas Barnes, suggests that as you go back in history, the strength of the field increases rapidly. A stronger magnetic field would mean more protection against cosmic rays, therefore, again, much less C14 produced, and again, this gives artificially old ages the more you go back in time. No. I don't know who Dr. Thomas Barnes is, but just, you're talking out of your ass, Ken. What you're saying doesn't make sense. Some recent, though controversial research has raised an interesting suggestion that c, the speed of light, has decreased in historical times. During the 1930s and 1940s, the measurements seemed to be so consistently dropping that controversy about declining c took place in the scientific literature for some time. See Does Distant Starlight Prove an Old Universe? Chapter 11. Oh, good. We're going to get into that. Where was I? If it is correct, then radioactive decay rates would automatically be affected and would artificially show high ages. You see, the thing about the cosmological constant, which is the speed of light, in a vacuum, it travels the same speed. It doesn't change. I'm pretty sure it's one of the more immutable laws of physics that c remains the same unless affected by, say, a gravitational object, like a planet or a star. You need something with sufficient mass to curve the or the photons to get them to decrease in speed at all. But as soon as they slingshot around and get back into a vacuum, the cosmological constant returns. Again, not a scientist. That's just my best understanding of it. And to suggest the cosmological constant has been changing based around primitive speed testing methods is just amazing to me. In summary, then, the C14 on Earth is not in a steady state, but is building up. This is not in accord with predictions based upon belief in a very old atmosphere. 2. On the basis of presently available evidence, the oldest radiocarbon dates have been adjusted from the apparently incorrect uniform model, which is still in use today, and when this is done, there is a shrinking in these dates. The older the date, the greater the reduction. He's just making it up as he goes, isn't he? 3. The protective water vapor canopy, and there was no water canopy, just the atmosphere. Before the flood would mean that C14 levels in the past were significantly smaller than at present, thus causing erroneous results. Now, it's been a while since I read the Bible. Admittedly, it has. But I don't actually recall a water canopy. Maybe that's my memory being faulty. It very well could be. But I don't know if a water canopy is congruent with what the Bible has to say. 4. Any systemic change in atomic constants, for example, a faster C at any time in the past, would also effectively reduce radioactive ages. How? Never mind the fact that this whole entire book is just straight up assertion with no evidence to back it. That is astonishing to me. Embarrassment from young dates. In any case, even the incorrect uniform model has given, in many cases, serious embarrassment to the evolutionist. Not a philosophy, not a religion. Stop calling it evolutionism. It's not an ism. By giving ages which are much younger than those he expects in terms of his model of Earth history. Consider this, if a specimen is older than 50,000 years, it has been calculated that it would have such a small amount of C14 that for practical purpose, it would show an infinite radiocarbon age. So it was expected that most coal deposits, such as coal, gas, etc., would be undatable by this method. In fact, of thousands of dates in journals, Radiocarbon and Science, two separate articles, by the way, journals. Radiocarbon is its own journal, and Science is its own as well. I've not heard of either of these journals, but something tells me they are, again, not actual scientific journals. Like, I don't know, anything put out by a university or government study. These both sound like Scientific American to me. So not actually like Scientific American is like kind of dumbed down explanation so the average person has a better chance of understanding it. This is especially remarkable with samples of coal and gas supposedly produced in the Carboniferous period 300 million years ago. Some examples of dates which contradict orthodox evolutionary views. Bullet point 1, coal from Russia from the Pennsylvanian, supposedly 300 million years old, was dated at 1,680 years old. Boy, I would like to see a citation from that, but I showed you his works cited page. It's a mess. So I have no way of actually checking. Natural gas from Alabama and Mississippi, Cretaceous and Eocene, respectively, would have been 50 million to 135 million years old, yet C14 give dates of 300 to 30,000 to 34,000 years, respectively. So let me get this straight. Probably inaccurately measured things, if they exist at all in reality and weren't just a figment of Ken's imagination. Also disprove young Earth. At least as young of an Earth as... Sorry, my belt buckle was digging into me. You know, the Earth is much older than 30 to 34,000 years old, but still older than he believes it to be because he has a book. Scientists have books. Many, many, many books that would beg to differ from your nonsense. Next bullet point. Bones of a saber-toothed tiger from the La Brea tar pits near LA, supposedly 100,000 to 1 million years old, give a date of 28,000 years. Okay, so the methodology that was used to give these measurements was probably inaccurate. And the only reason it got published is because, hey, this is a mistake we made and avoid it. And I am getting a headache. I am so glad this chapter is almost done. So glad it's almost done. Other C14 clangers. I don't know what a clanger is. I know what a clanker is, but we're not talking about Star Wars: The Clone Wars. In addition to the above effects, which are more or less systematic, there are other possible sources of error in C14 dating, which again, let me just say this again, carbon-14 dating is not what you would use to measure, say, the age of the Earth. I just want to put that out there. It's completely zooming right over Kenny's head, and I am getting a headache regardless of ibuprofen. In the light of all this, it would be foolhardy indeed to insist that a C14 date represents absolute truth. Again, I'm pretty sure you could find a scientist that would, you would not be able to find a scientist that says it's absolutely correct. It gives a window of time that it could possibly be. A window of age that it could possibly be. It's not an absolute, but hey, Kenny here is a Sith and deals in absolutes. Especially if it contradicts the clear teaching of Scripture. Now, whether these goat herders would have been highly educated compared to the others doesn't make Genesis true. In fact, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a practicing Jew that said, yeah, no, Genesis is literal. I don't think you'd be able to find one. Pardon me. I need to drink more water. That's what needs to happen here. Consider these examples of C14 results. A freshly killed seal dated by C14 showed that it had died 1,300 years ago. Again, this goes back to what I literally just said moments ago. It gives a window of time that the thing being measured existed in. Living mollusk shells were dated at 2,300 years old. Living snail shells showed they had died 27,000 years ago. We hasten to add that one can usually respectively find out the reasons for these sorts of anomalous results. For example, the C14 activity in dissolved carbonates in water, etc. But when testing a sample of unknown age from largely unknown environment at the time of its death, how can we exclude similar sorts of effects? My head hurts. From reading something this stupid, my head hurts. A quotation from a respected anthropological journal highlights. You're not going to name the journal. I'm just going to call it a highly respected anthropological journal. Highlights the nature of this problem. The troubles of the radiocarbon dating method are undeniably deep and serious. It should be no surprise then that fully half of the dates are rejected. The wonder is surely that the remaining half come to be accepted. I would love to know what scientific journal said that. I would love to know. But I don't think Ken here says. Let me give a look. 8. Oh, okay, here it is. Anthropological Journal of Canada. I've never heard of Anthropological Journal of Canada. So if any of my friends in the Great White North have ever heard of this, please let me know in the comments. In overview, we see that the radiocarbon dating method is certainly no embarrassment to a biblical creationist who believes in a young Earth. In fact, when fully understood in accord with modern data, it seems to give support to this position. Boy, do I think you're wrong. This was by far the shortest chapter, and I consider that to be a mercy because my head is killing me. I genuinely might ask someone to fill in for me at some point because holy shit. And we're only about a third of the way through this book. I call it a book only because it is a compilation of pages in a binding. That's it. I have no other earthly reason to refer to this as a book. This is ridiculousness, is what this is. But barring any sort of event that comes up, next week I will be reading Chapter 4, Were There Really Ice Ages? If you completely ignore the fact that we are technically in an ice age, it's just kind of a lull. You know, on the scale of the Earth, the amount of time it's been around, these lulls are pretty short, honestly. But hey, what can I say? Human-made climate change. Yeah, that I think will be a discussion for another time. Probably not with this nonsense. I'm going to go drink my weight in water and hope that it gets rid of this scratching in my throat. The reasons I hate reading aloud, if I'm being completely honest. But hey, I did this to myself. Something I did forget to do in episode 1 of this shit show was thank the person who gave me this book. I found it on Facebook Marketplace, of all things. It was originally $3, but then the dude was just like, you can have it for free. I will say this person is religious. They have no idea what I'm going to do. They have no idea what I am doing. But it didn't strike me as someone who cared. So thank you, random stranger on Facebook Marketplace. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to get going. Hope you all enjoyed watching me suffer. I am going to go drink some water and nurse this headache a little bit. So till then, see you in the next one.